If you ever tried to create a Rubik's Cube mosaic using Best Site Ever Mosaic tool, you might want to try the next generation tool that I'm working on right now, which is Cubing Art. Now, the old tool is not going anywhere. I will leave it as is, and I'm not adding new features to it. But Cubing Art Studio tries to give you the best version of the mosaic from the first shots, while you can still adjust it and tune it just in a very different way from what you used to do in this Best Site Ever mosaic. This thing has tens of methods, and I will add more. Some of these methods are not very useful, but the reason I'm keeping them is because in the next version, I will make a mask feature where you can combine multiple outputs, for example, face from this image and the background from that image or that one, and then you can create compositions, something that I used to do by hand, but now you will be able to create it in an automated way. So let's go ahead and check all methods and settings in this Cubing Art Studio that it has so far. Note that this is just the first announcement video, and the tool will be developing rapidly, and things will be added aside from Studio, because it's kind of annoying that Cubing Art movement is definitely there, and it's growing, it's evolving, it's everywhere, but there's no canonical home, there's no place on the internet which has it all, like the Guinness World Records, the Cubing artists, the map of galleries, and so on. So this is what I'm trying to make, but I will start with just the Studio. So let's go ahead and check the basic workflow. So if you are a Cubing artist, you can upload your image or take photo or just select from the example. So if you go with Mona Lisa, just as usual, you specify the number of cubes that you have. If you have very few cubes, such as 15 by 20, 300 cubes, then you can try to tune it by selecting the presets or going to the advanced option, which I'll go through in a minute. And once you're happy with that, you can download instructions. And just as usual, it creates a PDF file which you can download and preview and even modify here before downloading. It tells you which cubes you have to arrange in which positions to assemble it. Now, you notice the design of the PDF instructions is a little different. For example, it has this triangle that tells you, well, if you assemble this block, then this is the sort of left bottom block, and it doesn't have anything on the left and on the bottom. But the cubes that you have to sort of place this block adjacent to have these colors, which may come in handy. Now, apart from instructions, it has download button where you can generate a render for this mosaic, and it looks sort of photorealistic, and I will add dimension sheets and specify units in inches or centimeters, how big this mosaic is in the real world, and even generate 3D renders. So that was the basic workflow. And the adjustments that each method has, I mean, you can play around with them yourself, but let me go through how the gradient method, for example, is different from the gradient method on the original website. So here on the Best Site Ever, you control the level of each color individually. So just to remind you, the way it works, the gradient method, it converts the original image, let me make it a little bigger, to grayscale image, and then according to the brightness of the pixel, it assigns one of the 5 colors of the cube, and this is why you see this area being the brightest, and it's assigned a white color, followed by this area, which is yellow, and so on. Now, you see here that it's a little different with Mona Lisa having this checkerboard pattern. I don't know why it took me so long to realize that you can actually split the grayscale image into 9 segments instead of 5. So every segment that falls into one of these 5 assigned a single color, just like before. So if you remove checkers completely, set it to 0, then the result is similar to what you see in the original Best Site Ever mosaic tool. But if you allow some checkers there, then whatever zones of the picture falls into the in-between brightness areas assigned a intermediate color, but there is no really intermediate colors between white and yellow. But what you can do, or what program does, is it generates this checkerboard pattern that alternates the colors between these 2 tones. So a perfect value I found to be somewhere in between 1 and probably 0.6. Now the image split itself is organized a little differently than in the original tool, where you control each value by hand, which you may end up having no blue pixels at all if you set this value to be way too low. This thing works a little differently. You will never end up with an image that doesn't have any blue pixels. So if you decrease it to the minimum level, then, well, the distribution is shifted to one extreme versus this level to another extreme, which is more blue and less white. But somewhere in between guarantees that you do have some white areas, some blue areas, and they're distributed sort of evenly. Now you can play around with color palettes, disable certain colors if you don't like them. For example, if you try some of the diagonal dithering method, where the dithering happens not in a standard pattern, but in a diagonal pattern, you can see how disabling green color works there. This doesn't work very good with portrait images. Let's test it out with other methods and select a more abstract picture. So OKLab, or OKLab, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's one of my favorite new methods, which is based on this blog post right there. Huge thanks to Björn Ottoson, the creator of it. It just works fantastic on mosaics. And I had to add a little tweak that controls basically how much green you have on the image, because green color doesn't look very good with portraits. Let's try with Mona Lisa again. But you can still see that it looks sort of decent with a large number of cubes. Let's see what it looks like on different images with a lion if you select the pure tone, because it doesn't have to do much with the green color or portraits. I mean, if you ask me, this looks like a pretty amazing cube mosaic given the color alteration and the contrast. Now, one of the latest tweaks that I added to the original Best I'd Ever mosaic was the sharpen effect, which turned out to be quite amazing in boosting the quality of the image. Here, the sharp effect is enabled by default when you upload the picture, and you can disable it by just pressing the original here. But I would recommend keeping the sharpness here. And if you want to tweak it, you can definitely go to more effects and increase the sharpness even more, or increase the brightness. What else is there? Contrast, saturation, etc. So you can definitely play around with it and see how different methods can be combined with different effects. All right, before I finish this off, let's quickly check some of the other methods that are in here. In the Atkinson dithering, one of the tweaks that you can do is when you decrease the graininess and you have this sort of image, switching the mask from stochastic to ordered allows you to see these kind of very regular patterns here. So it resembles checkerboard patterns, which looks not very artistic, I would say. So when you switch to stochastic, you can see that instead of this regular pattern that tries to resemble the in-between color, the color blend, it now has more of an artistic touch, which basically is just randomizing the dithering with a bit more noise rather than just regular pattern that the original Atkinson algorithm has. Now, there are a lot more patterns to it. So, for example, 2 Sierra with stochastic gives you this effect, which it resembles the original color when you look at the image from far behind, and it works great with a lot of cubes. So you have this image. And another dithering method, apart from this one, is the Floyd, which has a little more patterns to choose from. So you see that the idea of representing the original image with a pixelated version of just 6 colors stays the same, but the pattern shifts. So this resembles more like a knitting rather than a Rubik's Cube. But if you choose different methods, you can see different patterns here. And you can again choose between the ordered sort of regular looking picture into a more artistic version of it and control the grain. So definitely a lot of tools to play around with, a lot of tweaks that you can make and experiment. I really want you to go ahead and try to play with it yourself. There are a lot of ideas on the top of my head that I can add to this tool next. Some of them include adding more methods there. And then, of course, adding a feature where you combine the 2 selected images. For example, the granite method, you produce this miniature, and then you choose a different method, tonal ramp, and you save this image, and you have these 2 images, and you can overlap them using mask. This is what I will add next, probably, as well as some other methods here. The ALGS is a big one, because when you generate instructions, if you have assembled cubes, pre-assembled cubes, like some of the mosaic sets where you have a lot of solved cubes, you might want to execute algorithms instead of just manually look at the cube and solve the mosaic. So at some point, I will add the checkmark here that you can cross and then see a speed optimal algorithm that you can execute in the cube. So anyway, I hope you have fun with this tool. If you have any ideas, you can let me know in the comments of this video, and see you next time.